please join me in welcoming back the wonderful Jessica Chastain, Peter Sarsgaard, and Michel Franco, who's somewhere there.
One little, Michel will be here in a little bit. He might be at the bar somewhere, but he'll be here shortly.
I think we can start by asking you about how did you get involved with the project? I mean, like, we are familiar with Michel's work as a Latino American filmmaker. We've always admired like the powerful voice that he brings, and I'm just really curious to know how you got to know about the script and work with him.
I was asked if I wanted to meet him, which I did because I was familiar with his work. And I read the script, and what was so incredible, at first I thought I knew the direction it was going. We'd come out of Time's Up and Me Too and out of the pandemic, and I thought, okay, I can see what's happening here. This is going to be some kind of revenge, Michel Franco, darkness situation. And what I was so moved by was that it was absolutely devoid of any kind of cliche. And so I knew immediately I wanted to do it. And we got on a Zoom, and it was just more about figuring out if we could work together. I mean, he's like, I don't have trailers. I was like, that's fine. And he goes, well, there's not really, you'll be doing your hair most days. I'm like, no problem. And I actually I went to Target and bought a lot of my costumes, and it was a really exciting and wonderful way of working. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. There he is, ladies and gentlemen! Woo! Michel Franco. Yes!
Hello. What were you saying, Jess?
We were just doing a little tap dance until you arrived.
Well, you're good at... Sorry, everyone.
I was just telling them how we met.
Oh.
It was a good story.
Okay, keep going.
And I talked about Target and, all that stuff.
What about you, Peter? How did you get involved with the film?
I actually have learned over the last couple of days that apparently Jessica recommended me for the part, which,
I'm a genius.
She was right.
Will you be my agent? I kind of need a little help. I met Michel right near Russ & Daughters in New York City, right around the corner. And we met, and I think both of us immediately just were like, let's go for a walk. And we walked for a very long time. I've been living in New York City since 1993, and so I felt like he talked about how he wanted to get to know this city that he was going to film in. And, I didn't know if I had the partner. Yeah, New York City. Especially right now. And took him on this long walk, and it was mostly... I really felt like I was meeting someone that I could talk honestly to, because this is a guy who does not lie. And that is the most important thing to me.
Don't lie, you said?
Don't lie.
You don't lie.
I can tell you I was having a gin and tonic, that's why I was late.
I already told them that's what you were doing. But no, and that type of directness that he has, that type of honesty, and also I had seen all of his films, and he's all about the actors. I mean, the way he films those wide shots, the time he takes, it's all for the actors. So I was just dying for the part. Yeah.
That's so fantastic. And I'm going to open the floor to your questions shortly, but I think we're all dying to know, how did the story come about? Like, you so skillfully created a film where like the main two characters are profoundly vulnerable, and the film just touches every chord of your emotions. How did this happen? How did you create the story?
Every film I write happens in a different way on the page. In this specific case, I started with the idea of the two characters meeting at a class reunion, and I knew that she was a troubled person. I didn't know much about her, but I knew that. And he would approach on the class reunion. She'd go home pretty much like you saw, like I imagine it exactly like that. He'd follow and stay outside, spend the night. I didn't know the rest. I didn't know why or who they were. I just had that hopefully cinematic imagery on my mind. And then for me it was a no-brainer. I like broken characters. I like people that are usually invisible, you know, to have a spotlight. And yeah, I always felt like an outsider myself, so I think this is about that, yeah.
Please keep your hands raised so I can see you. Yes, go ahead here.
Fantastic film and performance.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing this to Toronto. I guess my question is for Peter and Jessica. Other than shopping at Target, how did you prepare for this role? How did you kind of like prepare yourself to be in this world?
Target should pay us a lot of money for it.
So this is a question about how they prepared for the role.
So, you know, I have someone in my life who had dementia. He passed away. But the main way that I got back into remembering that behavior was I said, do we have any doctors who are consultants on the film? And we did. And then I talked to that doctor and I said, do you think any of your patients would be willing to talk to me? And he said, I have a couple of people in mind. And I developed this like maybe twice weekly phone conversation with a couple of different people. And it was really nice. We just chatted about all sorts of different things. And to be honest, most of the time, I don't think anyone in this room would think that at least one of them in particular had dementia. But then occasionally, you would really know that he had dementia. And he was so lovely, and he had such a great... I mean, he described an episode where he fell in the kitchen and was knocked out and woke up, you know, bleeding, and his son was sitting there. And his son said something like, well, you're not allowed to drive anymore. And that type of hope, that type of humor, that, you know, to refuse to be the condition, you know, people say, that's a schizophrenic. That's a person with schizophrenia. That's, you know, so same thing with having dementia. I just didn't want the condition to define him. So that was really helpful talking to a lot of people. And my uncle, who passed away, had it, and he was a very important person to me. So.
The wonderful thing about working with Michel is he creates the world of your characters. So normally I do things where I do a lot of research before I arrive on set, and then I show up, and then we start making the film, and like the actors are separated from the crew in some case, and then you show up when it's your time, and then you do the coverage, and it can feel quite technical. And on this, I worked at that house, and those were the residents who lived there, and I helped them put their shoes on and go to the bus and, you know, make their breakfast. I was actually, you know, working at lunchtime, and he was capturing all of those things. My very first day, and this also is you know, it's the immersion of the Michel Franco working experience. My very first day shooting was during some AA meetings, and they were actually people from the meetings. He didn't hire, I mean, yes, there were actors there, but it was an actual meeting that we were having. So I love to do all the research before I arrived, but then working on this film, it really felt like I could let it into my skin. I was just there. And then, of course, the sad stuff, you know, a lot of the trauma and the things that she went through. I think there's, sadly, when you look at the statistics, there's a huge high rate of women that have suffered violence and sexual violence. And so most of us know someone who has. And I think through my time and my experiences talking to people and what the things that I've read about it and learned about it, I really walked in also with that, so I could make her history in my mind. I made it. I had to create it from the beginning, and then try to forget it, because that's what she's trying to do.
And like Jessica said, we all know people that's been abused, and there's also people around and surrounding them that would help it to that wouldn't talk about it, that would rather say forget it or deny it, and yeah, that's also partly what I wanted to show on the movie. Yeah.
Here in the balcony, the person with the blue shirt, yes, go ahead. I think it's gray blue. Yeah, go ahead. So this is a question about for Michel, and how a recurrent theme for you is relationship and how to communicate with children. If you can expand on it, is that correct? Yeah.
Miscommunication?
Or like the work of trying to communicate with children about.
Or how you do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, children are very interesting to me because they're always not always honest, but rarely. Grown-ups, when you grow up, you learn how to hide your feelings, how to pretend you're someone else. Growing up is often growing a part of who you should be somehow. So I'm very attracted to what can be done on the page with kids, with teenagers. I think it's very interesting. Yeah, I guess that's the main reason. And visually, they're also very interesting to observe, and they change so fast. Yeah.
Back there, go ahead. Yes.
Great film.
Uh-huh.
Especially love your and Jessica's performances. You guys were phenomenal. My question is for you, Michel. This is your, I think I'm trying to think of the name. You've worked with Kate a lot. And how is your collaboration, how is your relationship kind of evolved and
How's your relationship with Eve?
especially when it came to this film and sort of the ultra wide shots that you got. Like there was one with Jessica Chastain's character in the forest where she's
About the
crying
wide
after she
shots
confronts Saul.
and me crying after I confront Saul.
She kind of had this space to kind of really,
Is there something about my record,
really kind of take in what is happening.
Thank you
As
so
you
much.
realize, I'm very deaf. Jessica's helping me.
Sorry, I'm just going to repeat the question for everybody. So this is about Michel's working relationship with a long-term collaborator, cinematographer.
Well, Eve Cape's a great cinematographer. When I needed somebody for Chronic that I shot in 2014, I thought, who can bring something new to my filmmaking? And he had shot all Bruno Dumont's movies at the time, and shot with Leo Scarx and Isabelle Huppert's movie with Claire Denis, White Material. So I thought this guy will bring something new to my filmmaking. And when he arrived to shoot Chronic, he was obsessed with After Lucy, and he wanted to do exactly what I have done. And we shot 7 movies or 6 after that. We collaborate. The way we work is I always want to see what the actors, how they read a scene. They show me their take on the scene. They perform it for me without any input. And then when we see what they do, even I frame it the best possible way. That's pretty much it. But I think he's a genius. He's got a great eye, and he never takes more than 5 minutes, or rarely does, to light a scene. And it always looks, when I say gorgeous, I don't mean, of course, in a flamboyant way. He's just a great cinematographer that understands the depth of every frame, of every scene, of the actor. So, I could talk for hours about how I work with Eve, and I could make you laugh with stories about how we have big arguments too.
We have time for one more
Definitely.
question. Go ahead. Did you want to say something?
I think one of the key themes that really stuck out to me was the idea of self-determined agency when dealing with, mental health and trauma. And for all three of you, or whoever wants to answer, I'd love to know: do you feel that what drew the two characters together was their ability to perhaps heal each other, or respect their own agency as as they build their relationship? Do you think that's what drew them together?
Thank you. So this is a question about how you find the relationship between the characters, between the people you embrace. It's about healing each other.
I found in playing Sylvia what drew her to Saul and what helped her to open up in a way that she really hadn't been able to her whole life was the idea that every time since she was a child and she walked into a room, she walked in with shame and judgment of herself, maybe also judgment of how people looked at her. And now she's meeting someone who every time she walks into a room, she walks in with who she is right there in that moment. And she's not walking in with her past. And she's not walking in like when her sister looks at her, there's a whole history between them of addiction and how in some sense Sylvia messed up and how in some sense Sylvia's the troublemaker. And this idea that she's with someone who just sees her for her without her shame and without her trauma, I found that to be so beautiful and also so tragic at the end when you realize that the ending is inevitable.
I'm clearly playing someone who has his present, and the rest of it is a jump ball. So whenever she comes in front of me, I'm just so delighted that this person wants to hang out with me, and that she is so. I watch her become available, And even though sometimes it's like I'm not piecing everything together, and maybe I think the movie is a little bit ambiguous about that, I guarantee you that I am falling for this person. And it really was like, I couldn't believe my fortune in my life. You know what I mean? That's what it felt like. So those other ideas are like ideas. For me, it was just more like, today's my birthday again.
Do you want to add something?
No. They're great. I think that it's over, right? We're gonna wrap.
Basically. But before that, I want to thank you, all of you, for being the greatest audience in the world, and thank you for your generosity. It is so fantastic.
What I meant by it's over, before it's finished, I want to say thank you, first of all, to this, two fabulous actors and partners in crime, and to all the cast. They're all, fantastic actors we had, and the crew members that are here, and you, wonderful audience. This is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.